To teen threadsters and anyone else who cares to listen. This is a short case study about Dishoom and why I love it so much. So Dishoom is one of the best restaurants in the UK. The food is delicious, it's Indian food, and not only do they win prizes for their food, they also win prizes for the way they treat their team, their interior design, and they have probably the best restaurant branding in the world. And I'm going to explain why I think they do. So, firstly, they have a really strong brand concept. So there's lots of Indian restaurants in the UK, but they have taken a brand concept from old Iranian cafes in Bombay. They've been around for hundreds of years. They peaked in the 1960s, and there were hundreds of them, and now there's just 30 remaining. And these cafes are all over the city, and they use these cafes to inspire stories. And for each restaurant that they open, and they only have 8, they write a story. So this might be, for example, in the Birmingham Dishoom restaurant, this one is next to a market in Birmingham, so they then write a story about a little girl meeting her father at a market in Bombay, and so they tie the place together. So market in Birmingham, market in Bombay, story of a little girl and her father, and things that they might have said to each other. This becomes the story, and this becomes the idea for the branding for that branch of the restaurant. Not only do they use it to inspire everything in the interior, but also the logo. So another one, for example, is Dishoom in Carnaby Street in London. Carnaby Street in London is really cool. It's where all the pop stars used to hang out in the 1960s. And so they wrote a story about a guy going back to India and taking a flight out of London, and therefore the Dishoom Carnaby Street is inspired by 1960s pop culture. On the left, Dishoom Kensington. So this Dishoom is in an old 1920s theatre. So this one is all about a Roxy Theatre in Bombay in the 1920s. Dishoom King's Cross is next to a railway station in London. So this Dishoom is all railway station inspired. And Dishoom, this one on the left, I think that's Manchester, is in an old building, Freemasons Lodge. So this one is inspired by Indian Freemasons, and therefore the logos. The logos are different, completely different each one. Dishoom Shoreditch is in an old house, and so it's got rich feelings of old house and old furniture and pictures on the wall. And I think this one is more 1950s. And so even when it comes to designing logos, the logo for each of their restaurants, although it's the same brand, is different. So, for example, this one for King's Cross, they've taken elements of old signs that were on trains and railways, and then used that design language to design the Dishoom logo. And then just literally scanned it in, or had it made in metal, and then scanned it in, and then that becomes the logo. So always an interesting story behind every logo. And they have interesting stories behind everything that they do. So on the wall, on the interior, this list is in all 8 of their restaurants. And because the cafes in Bombay had people of all ages and all wealth, so very, very poor people and middle class people, and because over the time a lot of people didn't know how, it was the first time they'd been in a cafe, and so these Iranian cafes felt the need to put the rules of how to behave on the wall. And one of the interesting things is, by putting the rules, it meant that everyone was welcome, all castes were welcome. And so by having these rules and saying that everyone is welcome ties back to the core values of their brand as a business as well. So digging into just one of them, King's Cross. So, each each of their restaurants has a different theme, but every single design item within the spaces somehow ties back to where they've taken inspiration from. So, the old signs that were pasted on the wall of a railway station in Bombay end up on the wall of this one. Old electrical boxes, the clock that hangs up above that gives it a railway station feel. It's not just any clock. That clock is a replica of the one in Bombay Central train station. And they do tons of other really fascinating stuff as well. So, for example, this old wooden board that would have been from maybe a church or a scoreboard, and it looks like an interesting old antique that's on the wall, hand-painted antique. But actually, these are employees that work inside the restaurant. So it's half antiques, but it's real life. So you can see who's working there today. Likewise, oil paintings on the wall are not just old oil paintings that they found. They're actually relevant to the people that work there or the people that have influenced the brand. When it comes to food presentation, they do really interesting things. So in 1977, Coca-Cola pulled out of India, and the brand that took over was a brand called Thumbs Up. So in a Dishoom restaurant, you can only buy Thumbs Up Coca-Cola. So it ties really nicely back into this kind of vintage products that you would have found in an old restaurant. So even though the food is contemporary and delicious, the products, the plates, the glasses, the knives and forks are all from dating back in time. They even have smaller areas branded with inside. They've got a juice bar, so rather than just writing juice bar above it, they found an old newsstand, A.H. Wheeler & Co., and bought that whole stand and built that inside the space. So brands within brands. And they do that within the bottles and the bottled cocktails, etc., etc. Menu writing, also super interesting. So, it may be a simple menu, but the way they write the menu has got a lot of strategy to it. So sometimes they tell stories about a place or a person. For example, in this first column, it's exactly what they're doing. But other times they're telling stories about just the food. And that might be, in this case, British food, where it came from, how it was made by hand, and it's got nothing to do with India or the story. They're just telling delicious stories. And other times they're having fun. For example, fine ladies' fingers for the fingers. So their menu is a mix of history, places, people, local produce, delicious descriptions, and a little bit of fun. They also build the brand by creating cookbooks, and so there's a whole kind of brand piece around this that help let people take part of the experience home with them. And one of my favorite things is the way they do discounts. So rather than saying, if you come before 5, you have 10% off, or if you become a member, or whatever it is. So they send a coin to everyone within, I think it's a mile of the restaurant when they first open. So you have all of these people that are members, or friends, or people that have worked with them. So these people have a coin. And if they take a group of friends, at the end of their meal, they get to roll the dice. And so they bring out this beautiful hand-painted tray, and you get to roll the dice. And if you roll a 6, and it's only one dice, so you've got a 1 in 6 chance, if you roll a 6, you get your entire meal for free. And not just you, everyone at your table. and it's every time you go. And the first time I went there, there's 4 of us, we had a big breakfast, it was expensive. Friend was like, oh, I have a coin, I can roll the dice, rolled a 6, everything for free. It's way more exciting than getting 15% off your bill, which is, with a 1 in 6 chance, is only 15% discount that they're giving you, but rolling a dice for it on a hand-painted Indian board is a much better brand experience than, oh, we've knocked 10% off your bill. They do a huge amount of brand work. If you check out their website, which I highly suggest you do, so all the activities, that's with their members of staff, with customers, not only tie back into Bombay, to India, Indian culture, but to what they're doing in the communities and the communities around them. Really impressive that a restaurant brand puts so much effort into enriching the lives of the people that work there and the communities that they work within. And last but not least, something that's pretty interesting about this brand, where you have such rich connection. Every sign, every book, every piece of furniture has all been considered and ties back to a single story. The name doesn't. The name Dishoom just means kapow, like in a Batman comic, and has nothing to do with Bombay or old Iranian cafes. So I hope you enjoyed this little video, and that will hopefully give you a little bit of a better idea as to how I think about branding and about how I think a company in the UK approaches restaurant branding probably better than anyone else in the world. Thanks.